5 Cursed Motel Tales, terrifying secrets revealed that still haunt survivors today. Michelle Thompson's tires crunched on the gravel as she pulled into the Crestwood Motel, its flickering neon sign casting an eerie green light that seemed to pulse with her racing heart. After a grueling 12-hour shift, exhaustion weighed on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Every night she walked the sterile halls of the hospital, caring for the sick, but tonight it felt different. A foreboding presence wrapped around her like a chilling fog. She was alone. As she approached the rundown building, shadows danced across the peeling walls, almost as if they were alive. The heavy air carried a musty scent that settled into her lungs. The elderly manager, Mrs. Johnson, greeted her with a toothy smile that sent jolts of unease down Michelle's spine. Her hands trembled as she handed over the room key, the metallic clink echoing unnaturally in the stillness. Michelle brushed off the sensation that something was wrong. She was just tired, she told herself. Opening the door to her room felt like stepping into an abandoned memory. A worn bed sat against the wall, the thin blanket crumpled from years of neglect. And yet, sleep called to her, a siren song she desperately needed. Just as she settled in, her heart jumped at the sound of a low thud reverberating through the night. A distant wail echoed, wrapping around her like ice-cold fingers. Goosebumps raised on her arms as she gripped her phone, convinced it was her only tether to safety. Was it an animal? A lost traveler? She wrestled with her imagination, but the sinister tension in the air thickened, suffocating. Flickering lights cast terrifying shadows, mimicking the figures that danced just outside her window. Michelle's breath quickened. She glanced again, nothing. But she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching her. Why had she chosen this motel? She remembered the locals' whispers, the warning glances she received. She thought of the family waiting for her at home, her little girl's laughter echoing in her mind, and longed for the comfort of her own bed. Before she could calm her racing thoughts, frantic knocks jolted her upright. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she approached the door, phone still clutched tightly in her hand. Cautiously, she opened it to reveal a disheveled couple, eyes wide with terror. They spilled out their story in breathless bursts. An entity, something lurking in the shadows tied to the motel's dirty past, families erased, folklore buried like the whispers of the town. "I swear, we saw it." The young man gasped, drenched in a cold sweat. They're watching." Trust shattered before her eyes as they explained what locals knew, of long-forgotten secrets rooted in blood and betrayal. The motel was cursed, the very foundation tainted. Michelle felt the walls close in, the thick air wrapping around her throat like a noose. There was nowhere safe to run. The isolation of the motel merged with the dark history she wished to escape. Whispering voices began to fill the room, ancient traditions bleeding into the present, seeping into their souls. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the room darkened, flickering lights dimmed, and with it came the weight of their dread. The couple's fear etched deep lines in their faces, and her own heart raced with claustrophobic panic. The walls felt alive, whispering secrets that only the haunted could know. Shadows surged towards her, and all at once, the realization set in: the Crestwood wasn't merely a motel. It was a web spun tight with sinister secrets. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the silence. The door slammed shut behind her, sealing their fate. Michelle's blood ran cold, fear washing over her like ice water. There was something far worse than being trapped. It was the knowledge that the Crestwood's haunted past was waiting to claim them all. Michelle's heart thudded erratically as the door slammed shut, reverberating through the small room like an impending doom. She spun around in a panic, her breaths shallow and quick, the oppressive atmosphere squeezing every ounce of rational thought from her mind. The couple stood wide-eyed, their breaths coming in jagged gasps, as if their very souls were still clawing for the last remnants of safety. "What was that?" Michelle whispered, voice barely breaking through the suffocating silence. The air felt charged, thick with static tension, and a far-off murmur seemed to echo around them, babbling unintelligibly from unseen shadows. "Nothing stays here for long," the woman said, her voice barely a tremor. "The last ones we saw, they never left." Her eyes darted to the corners of the room, as though specters were lurking just out of sight. A chill danced across Michelle's spine, and suddenly, that siren song of sleep turned into an uncomfortable hum. Here she was, trapped in a place steeped in ghostly whispered tales, leeching energy like a parasite. God, she should never have stopped here, should never have ignored the shaking hands of the locals, their urgent stares, the warnings she had brushed off. Then it happened. The lights flickered violently before plunging them into darkness. A pulse of fear raced through the room, making her limbs freeze. Only the eerie glow from the neon sign outside illuminated their faces, casting wild shadows that reached for her like grasping fingers. "Get your phone. We need light," the man shouted, his voice breaking with desperation. Michelle fumbled for hers, her trembling hand struggling with the screen. Finally, a white beam cut through the veil of night, revealing the worn figure of the couple, sweat beading on their foreheads, eyes wide with panic, but that wasn't all the light showed. In the corner of the room, just beyond the reach of their feeble illumination, something shifted, a dark form that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Was it a trick of her mind, or had the shadows finally come alive? "Do you see it?" The woman's voice shook. "What is it?" Michelle barely managed, feeling bile gather in her throat. "It watches." The man's voice quivered, waiting for something. Just as he spoke, an icy draft swept through the room. It curled around their ankles and swept toward the door, whispering with the weight of voices pressing in, ancient sounds in an old tongue. A scent of decay filled the air, overwhelming and sickening, and suddenly all murmurs came to a hissing halt, abruptly silencing the dreadful noises. And then it came. A figure emerged from the gloom, shifting like smoke, drawing closer, its presence palpable, wrapping around them as dread seeped deeper into their bones. The twisted face was barely human, blotched with dark stains and desperate eyes that seemed too void, too hollow. Not once did it utter a word, but in place of sound, a dark pull beckoned to the very essence of life, echoing every fear buried deep within. Michelle felt her resolve crumple beneath the weight of that gaze, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm that drowned out the terrified breaths of her companions. "Run!" she finally screamed, turning toward the door, but the world spun like a topsy-turvy nightmare. They raced towards the exit, dread clawing at their heels, the sinister darkness chasing them with a howling fury, but the door stood firm, refusing to yield to their frenzied panic. Her voice drowned among the oppressive pulse of terror. Michelle's mind reeled. What if they couldn't escape? What if the stories were all true? Just as despair began to consume her, the light sputtered back to life, and in the harsh glow, she saw it marked upon the wall, a faded outline, a scrawl so old and twisted it sent her heart racing again. "You can't leave," something deep within urged her to find the truth, to unearthing secrets buried in the shadows of this accursed place, but at what cost? As the sinister entity drew nearer, a breathless whisper brushed against her ear, "Join us." There was no way out. Or was there? The choice hung heavy in the air as time stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. What waited for them on the other side of that door? What horrors might they unleash if they pressed on through? The door shuddered violently, rattling in its frame as if it were fighting against some unseen force. Michelle pressed her back against it, her heart racing like a wild animal desperate to escape. It won't open. She screamed, panic creeping into her voice. The couple's faces twisted in despair, and she could see the fear etched in the lines of their foreheads. They were trapped unwanted guests in a house of horrors, tangled in the twisted grasp of something that fed on their terror. The figure, no, the abomination moved effortlessly through the shadows, its hollow eyes locking onto Michelle, making her skin crawl. She could feel its gaze digging into her very soul, an insatiable hunger radiant in its dreadful stare. "What does it want from us?" she whispered. The man pointed to the floor, where the shadows thickened into a pooling ink, swirling malevolently. "It wants the fear," he stammered, voice barely a whisper. "It feeds on what we are, on our regrets." A muffled sob escaped from the woman's lips, and she pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "No, no. I can't." Before she could finish, a howling sound erupted within the room, the figure flaring into a silhouette, blending with the shadows as if it were part of the very walls. The fluorescent lights flickered again, a fitful strobing that all but blinded them for an instant. They could barely breathe as the weight of those watchful eyes bore down on them. The walls seemed to pulse, almost alive, absorbing their fear and casting it back at them in a cacophony of horror and despair. "Think!" Michelle yelled, desperation cutting through her fear. "We need a way out." She turned towards the couple, their expression a mirror of the dread that gripped her own heart. "What do we do?" "Fight it," the woman gasped. "We can't let it in. We have to resist." As the air grew heavier with each word, Michelle felt something shifting within her, a fragile flicker of defiance igniting against the all-consuming darkness. She raised her phone, the light cutting through the shadow as she thrust it toward the being. "Stay back." In that moment, a sickening hiss escaped from the creature, and it recoiled slightly as if stung. Heart racing, she felt a sudden thrill. Could she resist it? But then she noticed something unnatural creeping along the surface of her phone screen, an oily shadow threatening to extinguish the light. "It's using our fears against us," she shouted as her voice cut through the mounting chaos. The walls around them seemed ready to close in, their surface twisting and writhing like a living entity craving flesh and terror. The man stepped beside her, his face ghostly pale as he gripped her arm tightly. "We need to think about our fears," he urged, voice resolute despite the tremor in his hands. "What haunts us, our regrets, our nightmares. We need to use them against it." Michelle's mind raced. Images of her past surged forward, each sharper than the last: the accidents, the lost opportunities, the choices that had morphed her life into a waking nightmare. "It knows," she gasped, the realization hitting hard. "It knows us. It knows what we fear most. Fight it with your own truth." As they grasped onto that insight, the room trembled under the weight of their collective horror. A low rumble echoed, and the silhouette wailed in agony, thrashing against the fringes of light that flickered violently. In that moment of divine clarity, she remembered her father's final breath, the silence after the chaos, the crushing regret that came with loss. "I'm not afraid of you," she screamed, and with all her will, she embraced the guilt and sorrow, channeling it into a pulse of strength. The air crackled with energy, shadows scattered like leaves in a storm. Every ounce of terror morphed into defiance as the trio formed a fragile bond, a chain link forged from strength against the encroaching dark. But just as victory seemed within reach, an earth-shattering crack echoed, splitting the air and throwing them off balance. The ground shook violently, cracking underneath their feet, revealing a churning void beneath. "Hold on!" the woman screamed as the darkness surged forward, pushing them towards the gaping maw of shadows that greedily awaited their submission. In that moment, the weight of the shadows loomed larger than life, twisting and writhing, a cacophony of whispers clawing at their sanity. But Michelle's heart pounded louder than the terror. "Stay together!" she shouted, feeling a ground tremor of something not human beneath her. But those terrifying whispers grew louder, a final haunting serenade that promised deliverance if only they succumbed. And then, amidst the chaos, the last thing Michelle saw was a figure stepping through the shadows, face shrouded yet familiar, one she had lost to time. The scream caught in her throat as she realized she might not escape this nightmare after all. "Join us," the figure beckoned, voice as sweet as poison. What remained of her soul trembled on the edge of decision. Would she dare confront everything she feared? Or would she vanish into the abyss that awaited? The ground beneath them split, and for a terrifying moment, it felt like time stood still. Michelle's senses screamed at her. The scent of damp earth, musty decay, an odor thick enough to choke her. And just like that, the familiarity of the room faded. She was standing on the precipice of a depthless void, shadows swirling, hungry and possessive. "Don't look away," she yelled, gripping the man's arm tightly. They had to resist, had to stay focused. Behind them, the woman stumbled, retreating in fear as her face contorted in horror. The figure stepped closer, its presence cloaked with a chill that pierced straight to the bone. "You're not real," Michelle shouted, anger and fear colliding to fuel her defiance. But doubt clawed at her mind. The voice, the promise of reunion, sounded so intimate, so inviting. The face was shrouded, yet the familiarity unnerved her. Could it truly be someone she had lost? "Michelle," the figure whispered, its voice laced with a cruel sweetness. "Come back to me." Struggling to breathe, Michelle felt her resolve wavering. Memories surged back: laughter, warmth, the soft touch of a hand she once knew. Voices wrapped around her, echoing old apologies and lost dreams. Every regret bubbled to the surface, tugging her closer to the edge, to the abyss that beckoned. "Fight it!" the man screamed, wrestling her focus back. "It's a trick." Tears blurred her vision as the shadows danced like a fevered illusion. Each tick of her heart rang louder than the last. Left unchecked, fear consumed like a wildfire. She turned to the couple. "We must face our truths. Dig into what frightens us, what keeps us awake at night. It can't win if we hold on." The woman, cradling her fear, nodded, though it was clear her will was dwindling. "I left my kids," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I should have been there. They needed me." The words hung heavy in the air, magnetic, crackling with the energy of guilt. Shadows writhed closer, absorbing her pain, getting stronger. "This is just the beginning," Michelle urged, feeling energy spark within her. "We can't let it have us. Focus. Use your regret." As she spoke, the shadows pulsed, the figure twisted in anguish at their words. But the woman's voice trembled, now brimming with anger. "I refuse to be defined by my regret." A shockwave of resistance surged through the trio as they united in defiance. The shadows shrieked, a banshee wail that rattled their bones, and for the first time, it seemed to falter. "Yours can't hold power over me," Michelle screamed, and she thought of her father one last time, releasing the grip of sorrow she held. "I will not be a prisoner of your darkness." The ground continued to rumble, but the darkness was retreating, losing its grip. They were gaining momentum when suddenly, the woman clutched her head, agony twisting her features. "No. I can't." A burst of light from Michelle's phone illuminated the space, revealing the figure's true face. It twisted and writhed in a grotesque mockery of an expression that once bore familiarity. Everything inside her screamed to run, but she stood her ground. "Stay strong. We can do this together," she yelled, raising her phone as if it were a sword, cutting through the thick dark with the remnants of their fear and anger. But the figure howled, its voice too rich with malice. "You think you can escape your destiny?" It lunged at them, an outstretched hand reaching, claws poised to drag them back into despair. "Now!" the man screamed, and together, they poured out their joined strengths. They hurled their deepest fears, from shame to loss, into the void, like bullets fired at an enemy. Shadows danced, twisting as they were forced back, retreating like flames snuffed out by water. Yet even as hope flickered, the ground beneath them groaned, cracking wider. "Run!" Mike shouted as a swell of darkness surged again, a tide too dense and relentless. And just as the light began to flicker, as if it could extinguish at any moment, the last thing Michelle saw were the shadowed eyes once again peering through the void, taunting them with a chill of nostalgic regret. "You will return." A hunger surged through her, a mixture of anger and fear, as they slipped further from the edge, toward the escape that loomed uncertain in the dim abyss of what followed. But as they dashed toward what remained of the doorway, the echo of that voice lingered, reverberating off the walls like a curse echoing through the corridors of her mind. Would they truly escape? Or was there still a price to be paid for the secrets they dared to unearth? The darkness roared behind them, a wall of swirling shadows, alive and insatiable. Heartbeats pounded in her ears as they stumbled through the narrow passage, desperately seeking the last vestige of light. Michelle could feel the chill of despair creeping closer, a breath on her neck, promising that escape was only a delusion. Faster! Mike urged, his voice edged with panic. They could still hear the shrieks of that figure echoing, reverberating through the split ground. Each footfall felt like ice stabbing into her resolve. "We have to stick together," the woman yelled, her voice faltering. She lagged behind, burdened by her guilt, unable to shake the ghosts that still clung to her. Michelle threw a glance back. The shadows seemed to pulse, the figure shifting amidst them, its shape morphing, expanding in a sinister dance. "Come back," it taunted, the words drenched in mockery. "You belong to me." A surge of fear twisted in her gut, and she pressed on, but it gnawed at her. That promise, was it a lie? She gritted her teeth, pushing the thought away. "Keep moving," she shouted, spitting fear like a curse. Just ahead, an opening materialized, a faint glimmer breaking through the suffocating grasp of darkness. "There! To the door!" With newfound determination, they surged forward, shoulders brushing, hearts racing. But the air felt thick, heavy, as if a tangible weight pressed down on them. Shadows clawed at their backs, slick and slithering. Each step felt like a countdown, a race against an unseen clock. "Where are we?" the woman gasped, desperation staining her voice. "What is happening?" They burst into a small room, barely illuminated by a flickering bulb. Dust motes danced like tiny spirits in the light. The walls were aged and peeling, revealing words etched deep in the decay echoes of past anguish. "Turn it off," the woman cried as they blew out their phone's light. The room plunged into darkness, the shadows swirling hungrily around them. Deliberate silence enveloped them, weighed down by the cries that lingered just beneath the surface. "What do we do?" Mike whispered, glancing around, eyes wide with terror. And then they heard it, the soft patter of footsteps outside, a cling of nails against the old wood, inching closer. "You think you can hide?" the voice taunted, gaining momentum. "The past never forgets. Why is it doing this?" Michelle fought to keep her voice steady, but fear clutched her throat. The shadows had found them, and there would be no escape if they didn't confront their demons. "We need to confront it like you said," the woman gasped, taking a step back. Tears leaked down her cheeks as memories twitched at the corners of her mind. "No, we'll die," Mike whispered, his hands trembling. "Or we'll live. Living means facing it," Michelle insisted. "We have to remember, to speak those names. It's the only way." Suddenly, the door rattled violently as if something outside was most desperate to get in. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of regrets and mournful cries. "Talk then." The woman broke under the pressure. "I can't face mine, I can't, don't let it win. It feeds off our fear," Michelle shouted, trying to rally them. "I lost my sister. I didn't save her from that night. But I know she wouldn't want me to be a prisoner in this regret." As Michelle's words echoed through the space, an intense energy hummed in the room. The shadows paused, a moment of uncertainty stirring in the air. "Now!" Mike cried, taking a deep breath, focusing on his own past pain. "I couldn't help my mother. I never stood up when I should have. I was weak." A roar erupted outside, rattling the walls, and the shadows pulsed with anger at their unveiling. It was a reminder of who they'd lost and what they had left behind, a truth that still stung. "Shout it out," Michelle urged the woman, who looked horrified yet resolute. "Don't let it claim you. Trembling, the woman finally spoke. I left them, my babies needed me, but I chased my dreams. They're gone because of me. The moment the final word left her lips, the room brightened with a blinding light. Shadows twisted in agony, screaming a sound so primal it rattled the very bones of the building. Don't stop! They yelled in unison, pushing the weight of their truths, their regrets, into the void of darkness, but the haunting words still lingered, echoing in the back of Michelle's mind, growing louder. You have unleashed what you cannot control. Before they could comprehend it, the lights flickered and went out again, devoured by the darkness flooding back, insatiable and fierce. Are we breaking through? Mike's voice barely rose above a whisper. Or are we just feeding it? The air grew thick with dread as the laughter returned, mocking and endless as the shadows closed in, suffocating the last vestige of hope. Michelle struggled to find her footing in the chaos, desperate to see past the encroaching blackness. They needed to fight, but the laughter echoed on, filling the room with fear. What would they have to confront next to truly break free? The darkness recoiled slightly but didn't vanish. Instead, it danced in a chaotic rhythm, whispering secrets that crept beneath Michelle's skin, chilling her to the bone. Michelle! Hold on! Mike shouted, reaching for her as the shadows slithered closer. She felt disoriented, trapped in a web of cloying black that seemed alive with malevolence. Don't let go! She yelled, but the confidence in her voice shook. The walls around them seemed to close in, tight and claustrophobic. The laughter morphed into shrieks, overlapping cries that implored for mercy, echoing the sins they had unleashed. Names whispered mercilessly, lost friends, neglected families, and dreams forgotten. Focus, you guys! Michelle snapped, as their surroundings threatened to twist into an abyss. Think past the fear. We can't let it take us. A flicker of defiance seemed to spark in the air. They channeled their dread into a burning urge to survive. Remember who you are, she urged, her heart racing. Underneath all of this, we're still here. Together. Mike echoed, his voice slicing through the haze like a beacon. The shadows twisted, as if responding to their combined voice. Together? The sinister taunt echoed. You think that can save you? What does it want? The woman whimpered, eyes darting, as the room pulsed with an uneasy rhythm. It wants us to break, Michelle replied. It feeds on our regret and guilt. Look! They're manifesting. Before them, the outline of shadows shifted, forming twisted shapes, ghostly images reflecting moments stolen from their lives. A young girl with haunted eyes, a man swallowed in silence, and cries of long-lost dreams floated through. It's a reflection, Mike realized, backing away from a ghost that mirrored his mother's sorrowful face. He shuddered. It's our past, pulling us back. No! Michelle screamed, stepping forward. We refuse. We refuse to be their echoes. The room darkened further, as if the very air thickened with impending dread. You can't outrun your past. Your truths will drown you. The laughter morphed again into shrill, mocking wails, challenging their strength. The ground trembled beneath them as the darkness pooled, a consuming wave threatening to engulf their very essence. Together, Michelle breathed. We can beat this. Each of them locked their hands, squeezing tightly. The warmth of their unity felt fragile yet fierce against the enveloping cold. We need one more push. She yelled. Eyes closed, hearts racing, they began to chant their truths again, each word tangible against the shadows. We are here. We are alive. The anger of the darkness surged violently, howling around them, sensing the tide beginning to shift. As their voices grew louder, Michelle felt an energy gathering, a heartbeat thrumming in tune with the rising crescendo of their truth. Suddenly, the laughter paused, split by a deep, rattling growl that emanated from the darkness. The shadows began to recoil, shrieking as the truths unfolded against them. Make it stop! The woman cried, fear clawing at her throat. We're not done. We're not afraid. Mike shouted, his voice cutting through the madness. A blinding light shot through the room, cracking the shadows' grasp, illuminating their haunted faces. But a flicker of doubt still shadowed the edges of Michelle's mind. What if this only keeps it at bay? She wondered aloud. Then we'll hold it at bay together, Michelle promised, determination flaring within her growing courage. Just keep going. But as they shouted out more truths, fragments of their past merged with the air around them. Visions spun in dizzying circles, a house ablaze, a fleeting glimpse of a child's laughter drowned out by screams, and faces twisted in despair became all-consuming. What other horrors from their past waited to spring forth? Would they have the strength to confront it all? The shadows shrieked, wailing louder as the light flickered, threatening to dim. The tension was suffocating, the room thick with the scent of fear and forgotten memories, and then it happened. A sudden, excruciating silence. All at once, every shadow froze, hanging. In stillness, waiting for their next move. Did they have it in them to unleash the final truth, or would it bury them alive in the echoes of their past? Michelle felt the air thicken, each breath a labor against the oppressive tension. The shadows held their breath, their twisted forms frozen in anticipation, waiting, watching. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, a taut string ready to snap under the weight of secrets about to burst forth. "Why is it so quiet?" the woman whispered, her voice shaking as she glanced nervously from face to face. "Maybe it's waiting for us to slip," Mike replied, his bravado faltering. He was right. The silence felt like a trap, ready to spring. They could taste the stale fear in the air, a coppery tang that reminded them of blood and loss. "Think of something else," Michelle urged, desperately grasping onto any sliver of bravery. "What was the happiest moment of your life? Share it." They nodded, doubts swirling, but they needed to push onward. "Summer camp," the woman said softly, her voice quivering. "When I finally made a friend, a real friend." The shadows trembled, the image of a sunlit forest flickering into view, a laughter echoing through their presence. It was quickly shadowed, interrupted by a sudden, dark flash, a reminder of neglected phone calls, the miles of distance, forging a wall instead of connection. I remember my first bike ride." Mike spoke up next, trying to rekindle a positive memory. "The wind in my hair, the joy of freedom." His voice cut through the darkness, and for a moment, the shadows waned, swirling slightly as if recoiling from the warmth of their shared memories. But it wasn't enough. The oppressive weight returned, singing a sweet, sinister symphony of their failures, each haunting them worse than the last. "No!" Michelle screamed, shaking her head violently. "We can't let it win. Your past is not a weapon." Mike added, his expression fierce with defiance. "It's a part of us, and we can choose to rise above it. Together." The woman echoed again, growing stronger, finding her own fire within the chaos. "We can be stronger than the pain." The shadows writhed angrily, retaliating with a sudden gust of icy wind that swept through the room, a bitter reminder of all they'd tried to forget. Whispers snaked through the air, slithering into their ears, voices of guilt clawing at their hearts, a cacophony of past mistakes shrieking to be heard again. "You think you can escape?" The shadows roared together, reverberating through the chamber. "You're bound to your past like chains of iron." "Shut up. You're wrong," Michelle yelled, her voice breaking from the swell of noise. Her heart raced. "We control our own stories." As if responding to her defiance, the shadows lunged forward, a swirling maelstrom of darkness wrapping around them. The light flickered again, threatening to extinguish, and they felt heat rising like flame licking the edges of paper. Each memory pulled at them like a weight, but above all, they could hear their own heartbeat, each thump defying the tyranny of despair. "We won't fall into your trap," Mike shouted with conviction, and that ringing declaration ignited something deep within Michelle. She realized, in this chaotic blend of realities, they still had power, the power to forge their future. They closed their eyes, the memories washing over them. A new rhythm built, a chant of empowerment. We are alive. We are not forgotten. As they repeated the mantra, the ground rumbled, and Michelle opened her eyes to see cracks of light breaking through the shadows, a thread forging between their fear and unyielding hope. But just when they thought victory was within reach, a hand cold and clammy gripped Michelle's ankle. She gasped, panic rising like bile. "Let us see how far you're willing to go," the dark voice beckoned with cruel delight. A heavy shadow formed, looming like a predator, testing the boundaries of their resolve. "Will you sacrifice for each other?" It whispered, a cruel edge lacing its question. "What will you give to dominate your darkness?" Fear flooded her veins, threatening to drown her resolve. The shadows were alive now, hungry and unrelenting. Each vivid memory and hidden regret loomed larger, more tangible, gripping them in an unyielding hold. What do we do?" The woman squeaked, her face paling. As more hands reached out, tightening their grasp, Michelle felt her heart pound furiously. She knew one thing for certain: if the shadows wanted a sacrifice, they'd have to fight tooth and nail. Could they unravel their tangled mess of despair, or would they be swallowed whole by the haunted specters of their own making? The darkness pulsed around them, a monstrous heartbeat in sync with their own, poised for that decisive moment. Would they confront the terror of their greatest fears head-on, or would they be doomed to walk these haunted corridors forever? The grip on Michelle's ankle tightened, dragging her backward. Her heart raced, a thunderous drum echoing in her ears. The chill from the shadow seeped through her skin, piercing deeper than any wound. She twisted, kicking instinctively, but the hand only squeezed harder, like a vice. "No! Get off me! Michelle!" Mike's voice cut through the panic. "We have to stay together." But as his plea echoed, the shadows surged with renewed fury. "I can't hold on!" The woman screamed, her eyes wide with fear, darting between the engulfing darkness and the waning light. Michelle felt like she was being ripped apart, one half tethered to the warmth of the present, the other pulled down into the freezing abyss of her past. The shadowy whispers grew louder, filling the air with taunts, dredging up regrets she had thought long buried. "You think you're strong? You think you can escape? You are nothing." The ground beneath them shook violently, cracks splitting like jagged teeth. Desperation clawed at Michelle's throat. "No! We are alive. We are not forgotten." The words tumbled from her lips, fueled by rage and determination. "Foolish girl," the darkness sneered, shifting like smoke. "You're shackled to your failures. Watch as your precious memories turn to dust." The world around them warped. The light dimmed, swallowed by the encroaching shadows. Scenes of their past flickered like a faulty projection, the woman's childhood friend now just a fading specter, Mike's carefree bike ride, the freedom crossing each field now tarnished by the weight of neglect. Each memory twisted into something grotesque and painful. "Focus!" Michelle shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. They needed a strategy, a way to wrest free from this malevolent grip. "Think of the bonds we've made. Our strength together." The shadows recoiled slightly at her words, hesitating just long enough for them to soak in that flicker of hope. "Remember the laughter, the joy," she implored, feeling their eyes piercing her, waiting to hear the depths of her own regrets. "We've shared moments that mattered." Beneath the onslaught of despair, a faint warmth ignited in Michelle's chest. She recalled long-forgotten laughter, the warmth of friendship, small victories tucked away, moments that defined them, a solid foundation in the storm of darkness. "Yes!" the woman yelled. "We are not just our past. We're more than that." As if struck by lightning, the shadows surged back, angry tendrils whipping around them, but their resolve stung like salt on a wound. The balance tilted, the flickering light resonated with their voices, growing bolder, brighter. Something snapped inside Michelle. "Take that, you vile things!" she shouted, swinging her arms, slicing through the dismal air like a sword, fueled by defiance. You don't scare us. The shadows shrieked, a cruel cacophony of rage and despair, losing their grip just as the woman found her voice once more. We want to live. We want to thrive. Together. Mike joined in, his shout echoing off the walls, a rallying cry resonating through the very fabric of their entrapment. Cracks of light began to bleed through the darkness as they shouted louder, united. Each chant pushed them through the suffocating grip encircling Michelle. But just as they thought they might break free, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. A colossal shadow materialized, forming into the figure of a grotesque monster, eyes glowing with malice, claws like rusted iron poised to strike. You think you can escape? I feast on your doubts, your sorrows. You belong to me. Michelle gasped, terror seeping back in. What do we do? Her voice trembled, the reality of their precarious situation sinking in. As the darkness loomed ever closer, its overwhelming presence suffocating, a chilling realization washed over her. They were on the brink of losing everything. Face it. Face it head on. She cried out, her voice breaking the thick tension. Would they confront this epitome of their darkness or become its next victims? The shadows swirled, more menacing than ever. And as the creature lunged forward, claws aimed directly at them, Michelle knew they had mere seconds left to make a choice that could either shatter their chains or seal their doom forever. Would they emerge as victors from this darkened hell, or would their cries be swallowed by the insatiable void? The air crackled with a tension that was almost palpable, each heartbeat drumming an ominous rhythm as the monstrous figure lunged forward. Michelle felt the ground quaking beneath her feet, the jagged fissures widening, revealing the abyss from which the shadows clawed at their souls. Keep fighting. Mike shouted through clenched teeth, his resolve hardening like steel. He reached out to grasp Michelle's wrist, pulling her closer. She could feel the warmth of his palm, an anchor amidst the encroaching fear. Together. The woman echoed, conviction painting her words with power. They had to break free of this torment, to reclaim what was theirs. With every ounce of strength surging through her, Michelle faced the beast. You don't control us. We are not your puppets. She screamed, each word fueled by the fire of their shared past friendships, laughter, dreams. Each memory became a blade, cutting through the shadows threatening to bind them. The creature hesitated, as if startled by their defiance. For a fleeting moment, the cavern felt lighter, the suffocating shadows retreating just slightly. You think you've won? Your joy is but a candle flickering against a storm. It hissed, eyes narrowing. Then we'll build our own storm. Mike retorted, rallying their spirits, emboldening their hearts. They pivoted together, hands clasped, voices elevating in a united chorus, a piercing anthem against the looming darkness. We choose joy. We choose life. Leave us be. Each proclamation was a bulwark against despair, pushing back against the relentless tide of shadows that sought to drown them. The creature recoiled, a semblance of fear dawning in its twisted features. Your trivial hopes can't feed me. It screeched, its voice a discordant symphony of rage. Watch us. The woman exclaimed, determination igniting the air around them. They took a step forward, the fracture beneath them stabilizing slightly, light bleeding through the cracks like an insistent dawn, and then, in a flash of blinding clarity, Michelle understood. Face your past. We're not ashamed. She roared, directing her words right at the heart of the monster. You don't own us. We will not be defined by what you've taken. With every syllable, shadows shrank back, as though they could feel the heat of their determination. The flickering lights intensified, dazzling brightness exploding from within their core where fear had lingered, now surged a fierce crescendo of hope, but just as it seemed the tide might turn, the ground heaved violently once more, and chaos threatened to engulf them anew. The creature drew closer, clawed hands outstretched, teeth bared in a malicious grin that promised nothing but darkness. Enough of this. It roared, a sound like grinding stone and shattering glass. You will become lost to despair once more. Michelle felt a cold shiver cascade through her spine, the familiar grip of her fears wrapping around her heart. No. We're more than our pain. We have each other. The shadows writhed angrily, swirling around them like a tempest. And then, in a flash of insight, an idea sparked. Focus on your truth. What matters most? She yelled, images flooded her mind, friends gathered, laughter ringing out, dreams unrealized but still cherished. As if reading her thoughts, Mike tightened his grip, drawing strength from the memories. Remember that summer at the lake? The freedom we felt? Yes. The woman exclaimed, her eyes alight. The campfire. The stories. We can't let this monster take those from us. As they united once more, a radiant warmth enveloped them. The shadows shrieked in fury, the monstrous figure momentarily faltering, but the fight was nowhere near over. The ground beneath them collapsed again, and a deeper chasm opened, darkness pooling, threatening to consume them entirely. Together. We must jump. Mike shouted, Michelle's heart pounded as they prepared for the leap into the unknown. What if it's a trap? She cried, doubt clawing at her. It's our only choice. He insisted, darkness closing in, claws reaching hungrily toward them. And in that breathless moment, with shadows swirling around, they were left facing the void once more. The fear of the unknown loomed large as they launched themselves into the abyss, wondering what truth awaited them on the other side. Would they soar to freedom, or find only despair waiting for them in the darkness? As they hurtled through the void, time felt distorted, stretching and folding upon itself. Michelle's heart raced, a relentless drum echoing her fears as the shadows clawed at them, desperate to snatch them back. The cold darkness wrapped around them like a vice, suffocating and consuming, hungry for the defeat of their spirits. Michelle could feel Mike and the woman beside her, their hands intertwined like lifelines. In that pivotal moment, she clung to their warmth, a flickering flame against the relentless chill of despair. We can do this. She shouted, though the words felt almost lost in the howling dark, yet, somehow, they sparkled with the light of hope. The rush of the void propelled them forward. Picture the light. Mike called, his voice steady even as the shadows whipped past their faces, threatening to swallow them whole. Remember what we fought for. Memories surged into her mind like a tidal wave, the laughter of her daughter, the joy of a sunlit day at the lake, the feel of warm, welcoming embraces. With every thought, she infused strength into their shared connection, a tether to the light flickering just beyond the darkness, guiding them through the storm. And then, as suddenly as darkness had embraced them, they began to emerge. A warm glow gathered around them, pulsating with their collective spirit, igniting every corner of the void. The darkness screamed in anguish, furious against the rays of hope that cut through its depths. Keep going. The woman urged, her voice rising above the cries of the shadows, a battle cry filled with determination. Embrace who we are. The interwoven light brightened, flooding the darkness in shimmering bursts. Michelle could see faint openings, portals of their happiest times shimmering in the distance, glimpses of laughter, love, and joy woven into the fabric of their spirits. With each moment they envisioned, the shadows shrank further, defeated by the undeniable truth of their connection. Together. They roared as one, propelling themselves toward the memories that bound them, smashing through their barriers of fear. With a rush, they burst free, slamming into a world that felt alien yet welcoming. They landed on the cool grass, the air sweeter than honey, infused with the warm glow of twilight. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden rays that danced around them, wrapping them in a gentle cocoon of safety. The motel loomed behind them, casting eerie shadows, but its presence felt distant now. The weight of the past that had felt so heavy was now lifted, shimmering like morning dew in the first light of a new day. Each breath they took filled their lungs with relief, a promise of a fresh start. I can't believe we made it, the woman whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, and vulnerability seized her voice. I thought I'd never escape. We did escape, Michelle replied, looking into their eyes, finding strength in the shared bond that had sustained them through the dark night. Together, we faced what haunted us. We fought for our lives. They sat in a circle, hearts still racing but no longer shackled by fear. Their shadows were simply fading whispers behind them, reminders of where they had been, but not of who they would choose to become. Michelle glanced toward the horizon, the sun settling, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. "We'll face whatever comes next," she said firmly. "We're not prisoners of our past." The couple nodded, and they all fell silent for a moment, letting the calm wash over them, soothing the raw edges left by the encounter. In that serene moment, they made a pact, to remember their struggles, not as chains binding them, but as lessons that taught them how to rise above, how to embrace what lay ahead. Suddenly, the weight of fear lifted from their shoulders, replaced by an electrifying sense of liberation. They were reborn, stronger and more resilient than before, destined to share their tales and heal from that cursed place. As the moon rose, illuminating the night, Michelle took a deep, cleansing breath. "Let us go home," she said. A smile breaking across her face. The couple began to laugh, light and joyful, and together they walked away from the Crestwood Motel, stepping into a brighter tomorrow. In that moment, everything fell into place. They were not merely survivors, they were warriors reborn from the ashes of a nightmare, bonded forever by the truths they had embraced. And though the shadows may lurk in the corners of their minds, they knew now, above all, light would always cut through darkness, as long as they chose to stand together. If you just loved this conclusion, then you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will leave you breathless. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep us alive. And don't forget to flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the ending you just read. Did you see it coming? What did it mean to you? Get in there. Lastly, share this video with at least 5 friends who need a piece of this amazing journey. Don't wait even one more second. Your support means the world.